Many enemies lurk in the night across the lands between. We've already discussed the Knight's cavalry who stalk the night searching for the tarnish that Margit has deemed worthy of their attention. But there are others who use the cover of dark to achieve their goals. One warrior who hunts his prey after the sun falls is the bell-bearing hunter. He's an imposing figure, covered in barbed wire, who only appears in certain locations. He's a hunter of merchants who takes their bell bearings as souvenirs. So who is he? Where can we find him? And why does he hunt those who only wish to be left alone to run their businesses? The first time our Tarnished is likely to run into the bell-bearing hunter is traveling to the War Master's shack at night, where we expect to find Knight Bernal and learn some more weapon arts. We're met with an ominous sound and the red shadow of a large invader. A hulking man stands before us with a sword that can be thrown and summoned back, making it an intense challenge for a new Tarnished. Should we manage to defeat him, we are rewarded with the Bone Peddler's Bell Bearing. Bell bearings are items we can find in the lands between that allow us to add items to our store at the Round Table Hold. However, they are most commonly held by merchants. Should we decide to do battle with a merchant, we will gain their bell bearing upon their death. With this in mind, it's obvious that the bell-bearing hunter is not simply hunting these items, he's hunting the merchants and taking their bell bearings as trophies. The bell-bearing hunter can be encountered in 4 different places throughout the lands between: the War Master's shack, the Church of Vows, the Hermit Merchant's shack, and the Isolated Merchant's shack. While the Hermit Merchant and Isolated Merchant shacks make sense, the War Master's shack and Church of Vows are not as simple. It's likely he wishes to take the weapon arts of Knight Bernal to aid in his hunt, which explains his presence at the shack, but the Church of Vows? What reason could he have for being in this place? Perhaps he seeks absolution for his crimes. Although you can encounter the bell-bearing hunter in these 4 locations, it is possible to fight him in one last area. After reaching the Altus Plateau, our Tarnished can find their way to the Shaded Castle. This area is surrounded by and sinking into a poison bog, and there are enemies throughout that cause poison and scarlet rot. The entire area, more so than most, feels like it's dying, eternally decaying in a world of undeath. A ghost in the area sheds some light on this, saying, "House Marius is ruined, just deserts for falling for that severed harpy. No surprise that guilty Cretan took the castle and our storied sword." Once we reach the final room of this castle, we see a portrait of Melania, the harpy the ghost mentioned, and standing in front of it is the bell-bearing hunter in his true form, Elimer of the Briar. This fight is much the same as our previous battles with Elimer. However, this time, when we defeat him, we do not receive a bell bearing. We instead earn the Marius Executioner's Sword and the Briar Great Shield, both of which shed light on who Elimer was and his motivations. Before discussing these items, it's also worth mentioning that after defeating him, we can purchase his armor set from the Round Table Hold, which provides additional details. The Marius Executioner's Sword was the storied sword of House Marius, the family of executioners who presided over the Shaded Castle, and it tells us, Elimer of the Briar, the bell-bearing hunter, snatched the sword from the site of his looming execution, and furnished it with battle skills from his home of Echoade. This skill is the Echoade's Dancing Blade, which allows you to throw the sword in a corkscrew attack and have it return to you. The Regalia of Echoade also shares this ability, and tells us Echoade was a lesser, long-vanished kingdom. We learn more about Echoade through the Briar Great Shield, a great shield from a foreign land, used by Elimer of the Briar. Attacks with this armament utilize the iron thorns that have been wound around its frame. Originates from Echoade, a land of proudly solitary ascetics. Every piece of the Briar set says it is from a foreign land, and that the winding rusted iron briars are the mark of the guilty, and typically indicate a sentence of death. Elimer murdered numerous instructors and merchants, and was known as the bell-bearing hunter. From all of these descriptions, we can paint a picture of Elimer, who he was, and his story. Elimer of the Briar hails from Echoade, a land of ascetics, or people who practice severe self-discipline and abstention. While his land is a long-vanished domain, it's fair to assume it was conquered by the Golden Order during Godfrey's conquest of the lands between. which means Elimer likely would have followed the practices of the Golden Order. From the description of the Briar set and the Marius Executioner sword, it looks like he was sent to the Shaded Castle to be executed, and had his armor covered in rusted briars as a mark of his guilt for the crimes of murdering instructors and merchants. As for why he hunted merchants, that comes back to the greater story of Elden Ring. If we look at any piece of the nomadic merchant's armor set, we learn the following. These merchants once thrived as the Great Caravan, but after being accused of heretical beliefs, their entire clan was rounded up and buried alive far underground. Then, they chanted a curse of despair and summoned the flame of frenzy. It is believed their heretical beliefs were centered around worship of the frenzied flame, something the Golden Order would want to put a stop to. We can find this tomb far below Leyndell Castle, where the merchants were left to rot. While trapped below the city, these merchants summoned the Three Fingers in order to get their revenge on the Golden Order, which is why we can find the Three Fingers in these catacombs. This is why the few merchants left in the world are found in secluded locations, and many are nervous upon first meeting our Tarnished. They're in hiding because they know they are being hunted by those who still uphold the Golden Order. It's very likely that as a knight who believed in self-discipline and abstention, Elimer sees the leftover merchants who carry chaos within them as a plague that must be extinguished from the lands between. And I doubt the Golden Order would have taken issue with this. In our opinion, the issue lies with his murder of instructors. We believe these are the acts that led him to be sentenced to execution. Unfortunately for those who resided in the Shaded Castle, Elimer is a knight of exceptional skill and was able to steal the Marius Executioner sword during his own execution, killing the head of House Marius and taking the Shaded Castle for himself. After this, Elimer continued his hunt for any who hold bell bearings, ridding the world of those he believed taint the Golden Order. The bell-bearing hunter, Elimer of the Briar, is a formidable foe anytime you cross paths with him in the lands between, and the amount of backstory woven into his armor and equipment add a depth of character to this knight that make our battles with him all the more satisfying. Let us know what you think of our analysis of the bell-bearing hunter in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on our next community-chosen lore video on the Bloodhound Knights. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore.